Hello everyone, it is Lennon, and today I want to talk about a new Oracle deck that I have received. A little backstory first. A while ago, I was ramble reading on the internets, okay? And what that basically means is that I was doing something like probably reading a book, and came across a word that I wanted to plug into the thesaurus because I don't know, I consider myself a word witch in those kinds of ways. So I'll like go in, play with synonyms and antonyms and things like that, and then I'll lead me down like Wikipedia, the public domain, and the images, and then that'll lead me to websites and stuff like that. So anyway, that's very much what happened this day, and I landed on the archive website for the Drollery Dreams of Pantagruel. And I was looking at the text and looking at the images because mostly in this particular volume, there were just like pages of images, not really text. And I was kind of looking at the figures and things, and I kind of sat with them for that day, and was just dumbfounded by how the concept of dreaming, the concept of this being like this, like imagined, man, okay, Pantagruel, and then his dreams and what those images would look like. It was just fascinating. So anyways, I sat with the images, and there was something about them that made me think of Sorsha. Now, it could have been that the time in which this book was, the time in which like the little stamp at the bottom of archive.org or whatever said that this book was made, like given the time period of the text itself, like the book itself, but then also the look of the images. And me and her had gone back and forth through video, not necessarily direct talking, but through video, kind of gone back and forth on the weird, on the obscure, and the creepy. So I messaged her on Instagram, and I was like, here's a link. I don't know if this is going to be your vibe, but I think you need to go check these things out. Just here you go, right? And I kind of left it at that. And of course we had, a few dialogues after that, exclaiming that she was kind of in agreement. She was in love with the little creatures. And then not too long ago, she messages me and says, by the way, I need an Oracle deck, and I am using the images from the Drollery Dreams of Pantagruel. And I immediately, when I got the message, I immediately squeed out loud, like, ee! And so I was extremely excited about the project she was working on. And in loving drollery, she sent me a copy of her deck. I'm going to leave the link below to a blog post of hers and kind of explaining it. And then also the Make Playing Cards link for you if you're interested in looking this up. I've been having so much fun with exploring this Oracle deck. Now, as someone who's always loved to look at and research manuscripts, and then a little on books of hours. I love the concept of a book of hours. These small prayer books where you would put psalms, litanies, lamentations in them that you would have to do like in a ritualized way throughout the course of a day. I love that concept. Oh, and then how beautiful illuminated manuscripts are in the printing process, in the illustrated process, in the illumination process, the research, and just for like inspiration, image inspiration alone. I love researching that stuff. And I want to refer back to one of Sorsha's recent videos about Drollery and Marginalia. Now, have a, like, I guess you could say inspirational love, researching love of manuscripts and books of hours, I am not a stranger to Marginalia. Now, at first, like when I thought of that term, it's kind of one of those things that I think of in terms of annotating. Like, I always thought that the illustrations in the margins of these manuscripts were illustrating the text. And that if they seem to go off the wall, that's kind of how the brain works, in my opinion, is like, if I'm reading something and I think about it'll inspire me or make me think about something else, but I reference that something else on that page. Like, I'll write a little note in the margin of a book, or I'll draw a little doodle. I'm going to give you an example right now, actually using this specific deck, kind of in that capacity. Like, I've made my own Marginalia here. Now, I pulled this image the other day, and if you can see, it's like this duchess looking lady with all these children, and they're suckling at her breasts. Okay, well, some of them are, while the other ones just look to be like these impish creatures down below in her skirt. Okay, so I pulled this, and I immediately got inspired with like this. It's not really a poem, it's more just like a thought, okay, that I put in my composition notebook, my graph paper composition notebook, which is turned into like this primitive poem place, like this sacred poem place that I have. And it made me think of something, and I'm going to show you a picture of it, okay? Now, when you think of suckling at the Sphinx to gain knowledge, okay, the Sphinx is referencing the Sphinx of Egypt, the Sphinx story of the riddle and solving the riddles. Like this, the whole concept of like going through gates and there being initiations and sacrifices and things like that. I love that kind of stuff. And so this image of these little imps suckling on the teats of this duchess, okay, made me think of that. And so if I were to have this a book, like this image in a book, with some text maybe of, I don't know, what women roles were back in the day, okay? Let's not go there. But, and it made me think of the Sphinx story and the riddle, and I wrote that in the margin. And then someone in 100 years are going to be like, what? What is this? This doesn't add up. It's not the same thing, even though for me it does. So I kind of think of Marginalia as illustrating the text, but then also a way to fight the religiosity of the time, to combat the dullness of the task of writing and scribing this whole thing of the manuscript. Or it could be something that was like actually commissioned. Like, I kind of had this epiphany the other day, that I'm imagining this like princess, probably a Visconti, okay? And she has to have a book of hours because you have to do it, right? And this isn't historically accurate. This was just like a vision I had of this princess. She was blonde and she was kind of like snooty, right? And she meets with the scribe because her daddy gonna buy her a book of hours. And she's talking with the scribe, and the scribe is kind of like a young friar, right? So they're kind of roughly gonna be the same age. And she's like, okay, but hours are boring. So can we do something to like fascinate me while I'm doing it? And they go back and forth. They have this like weird giggly dialogue as to like what I would consider the lawless imaginations of man. If you want me to quote William Godwin, okay. I'm going to leave the lives of a necromancer down below for anyone interested, because I think it's gold when you want to research witchcraft, okay? So, the lawless imaginations of man are what they would have been like doing. So anyway, this was a vision. Now, typically manuscripts, illuminated manuscripts, and even highly decorative books of hours would have been commissions of the nobility, okay? So lay people weren't having these things. So, but that's how, goes to show like how Marginalia is this like confusing concept, really, because whether or not we know whether a specific text was commissioned and for whom, and whether or not they're using the ridiculousness of Marginalia and Drollery, which is just like the concept of entertainment, right? Because when you think of the word droll, as a thespian, I think of theater. I think of like not so much theater as in Shakespeare, but theater as in like the jesters and like a comedy skit that would have been back in the medieval times. I think of Drollery definitionally like that. So when I think of Marginalia in going in the droll region, it makes sense that some of it would be like ridiculous and highly imaginative and rendering the upside down world, which is another form of entertainment that those people of those times would have had. So all of it fascinates me. I believe in Marginalia. I believe that if I had a memoir, if I wrote a memoir, I even do this in my books of shadows, in my books of mirrors, in my composition notebooks, like I just showed you with the Sphinx. I believe in the concept of annotation and Marginalia. I believe that if I were to write a memoir without my Marginalia, like my little doodles or my little notes in the corners and in the margins of that book, you would get nothing. You would get nothing out of that. You would have to have my little doodles in there to really get me, in my opinion, right? So anyway, I believe in Marginalia. I want to talk about the concept of devils, imps, pukas, fae, like kind of in between creatures. And I call imps, devils, demons, and the fae in between creatures because I believe them to be, yes, I believe them to be have like this mischievous nature overall, all of them. But then I also believe that they can bring good luck or they can bring bad luck. And it just really all depends on their mood. And this moodiness of these creatures draws me. It pulls me in. So we're going to look at some cards now. And I want to, thank Sorsha for making this beautiful deck. I hope that it reaches the people that need these little demon nymph friends in their lives. It's funny, as I say that, like as an aside, it's funny as I say that, I've noticed that because it's the deck is so chunky, I've noticed about myself while using it that I've divided the deck into like small sections and placed them in different areas of the house, which now that I'm thinking about it, because I was just about to show you that, you know, we're going to look at some cards, and this is like nowhere near the whole of the deck, right? I've been putting these imp, devil, demon creatures in the corners of my house. Like I'm like unleashing them into the corners of the house. So now I have these mischievous little creatures that are hiding in all the corners, under beds and behind dressers, waiting to enact their good or evil ills. That's something fascinating to think about. Anyway, a lesson in imagination. That's what this is. A lesson in imagination. I believe in Marginalia and I believe in imps. Okay, let's look at some cards. So look at this chunky deck right here. That is a chunky deck. Anyway, these backs, and actually you can probably see the linen texture. I love that for this deck. It's very beautiful. And this marbling paper here is actually present in the text of the Drolatic Dreams of Pantagruel, as Sorsha says. So it's very, very beautiful. I love marble paper. I have an affinity for that. So anyways, we've already seen what I am calling the Duchess with 1,000 teats. Okay. Now I'm calling her a duchess just because that's what I see in this card. And that's kind of why this oracle is so beautiful, is because there definitely are historical things that we notice in the figures. Which also makes me think, you know, like it's funny to think that we dream since these are the dreams. We dream in our own culture and in our own time frame. Like we really don't, go off of our own time frame and our own history and culture when we are using our imagination. Something powerful that we can actually think about in terms of imagination is that we can go far back into history with our imagination, and then we can go far forward as well. I think that sometimes people play up the fact that imagination has to be forward thinking and has to be like future escapes and things like that. But the imagination really could go in any direction. And I think like using this specifically, this is supposed to be the imaginings of this Pantagruel, but that it's very based in cultural, it has cultural context. So I think that that's this illustrator here didn't really go too far from what the everyday life would have been. So anyway, I think that that's fantastic. So like we've already seen the Duchess here, but I want to make mention of these two cards really fast, because I think that in terms of this deck, I see a lot of interplay, I guess you could say, with tarot. Like this very much looks like the Fool to me. Not necessarily a traditional Fool, like with you know, like what we would see in the earliest forms of the Marseille. But the fact that they're wearing a playing card in their hat, but then also dressed as a jester, I think that the Fool itself as an archetype, a tarot archetype, it comes from the comedic expression of the jester and of the Fool. So this there's a lot of tarot that I see in the deck, which is fascinating when you want to pair with tarot, when you want to pair oracles like this with tarot. And then this, we've already talked a little bit about Marginalia, but this right here, I know this is like a huge cricket, like a cricket thing, but this demon face here with the snail body, these faces with animal bodies, it's very kind of blending of animals and humans. And I think that that's another interesting thing that we can think about when using decks like this, with there being such a blending of like animals and people, or anthropomorphizing animals, things like that. We kind of think about, okay, well, in a parody type of a way, what would this mean? What would it mean to have a rabbit head, right? Or what would it mean to have a horse hooves? Like, does it necessarily mean that this person that we're imagining is acting like those animals, like that has like some tendencies of those animals, or is it symbolism? Like, we may never know. So anyway, I think a lot of this, what this using the deck and playing with it has made me realize is that there's a lot of everyday life that I see in this. For instance, like this figure here has a platter of what looks to be frogs. And we know from historical context that they would have cooked frogs. There's frog stew, you know? So also, can I just say for this one card that I believe that hats with slots for spoons needs to become fashionable again. Okay? Because I have several like gardening hats that are like made out of straw and things that you wear outside when you're gardening so you won't get sunburnt on the head. But to have a spoon in it, of course there would have been, you know, the chef would have been gardening of some sort. But it's like there's this interplay with this chef here being like this medieval chef in the castle, and they have this like garden out back, and they're always in between the garden and the castle, right? The garden and the kitchen, and that's what that makes me think of. So, but it's like spoons and everyday types of utensils are very much used in this deck. I love that. This card I had a hard time with because, well, not a hard time, but I see in several of the cards these little things here that look to be coin, like well, I guess in context this would probably have been a coin purse, but because of the size or the emphasis here on the genitalia area, this kind of makes me think that this is an animal, like an animal intestines, part of an animal intestines, which would have been used in contraceptive ways back in these times. And how this, I don't know, this kind of tells me of the, like, you know, the almost like the pandemic of syphilis at the time, and things like that, and like, you know, ways in which you would try to stop that, prevent that. And then I love the use of distaffs, because that was very much a thing where, you know, we're having to make our own clothes, we're having to make linen, and it's it's such a process, because you can't let your you know, you can't let your string go lax while you're, you know, in this process. But the faces, I love the expressions of these faces, because even though we're seeing the like everyday lives of these figures in the like looking just at the distaff, you know, like this is some kind of seamstress, right? But it's almost like a parody on everyday life. This is also interesting. Like, we're throwing away books, very much sending me down, like, making me think of books that were banned, burning books. The fact that this looks like a garbage can on the top of this person's head makes me think that, like, this is the trash person of the Middle Ages, and they are given the task of throwing away the books that were banned. You know, maybe this is a person in the clergy, right? So we, you know, again, we never really know. This is a butter churn, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but again, use of everyday life, right? Not very imaginative, right? Even though some of these are going way far out there, I do like to look at the medievalness of the everyday life that we do see. Now, these look like coins on first glance, but to me, because they have symbols on them, like coins back in that day, probably would have been pewter, or, you know, not pewter, gold and silver, but these could be like pewter coins. These could be saint medallions, or what they would have called badges back in those days. These could have been, these could even, in the way, kind of what I immediately thought of when I saw this was Eucharist cakes, like the little crackers that are given out during certain masses. But again, I don't even know if that would have been historically accurate. And then look, this is a giant shoe that someone is wearing. Again, we see this like pussy willow here. This noble, this looks like a horse swatter, to be honest with you, like what you would have swatted the horses with. So I don't know. It's very noble. But this slipper is nobility as well. You know, peasants wouldn't have been wearing slippers like this, especially not with the tassels. So it's kind of got this like satirical nature to the nobility. But then also we're seeing the everyday man, we're seeing nobility, we're seeing the parody of both of them, and then we're seeing the clergy as well, like this fight against the I guess the religious orders. Probably what would have been monks that had really big personalities. I always have these visions of the monks in medieval times having really big personalities in their communities. So, you know, and then this also speaks to me of nobility as well. We see this like imp, I'm calling this an imp figure coming right out of the flora here to put this slipper back on this figure. Okay. And it kind of makes me think of like witchcraft, like this person summoned this imp right out of the ground because he couldn't be bothered to put a shoe back on. So, you know, like here's where we see a little bit more of a like parody on the everyday. Like here's this knight that's probably one of like the lowly knights, not a brave, not a heroic type of a character, but one that's very, very much in training, maybe like I don't know, like a page or, you know, something that's kind of learning, but is very clumsy, right? Like very clumsy with their training, and they're getting made fun of because of that. So, all right, the next section is just here's some like favorites that either I've been pulling or whatever. I love the use of books and, you know, musical instruments. I think that the scissors, I love the scissors here, but also the flora. There seems to be a lot of these wisps of grass in almost all of these pictures. Like everyone's outside. Everyone. Doesn't matter. Everyone's outside. communing with birds. So, again, love the straw hat. This to me doesn't look necessarily like a book. It looks like a ledger of some kind. It's not a book. It kind of looks like a receipt, like a ledger, or possibly even like a musical sheet of, a sheet of music. But it's probably, because they're pointing, probably a ledger of some kind, like they're counting certain goods, or counting what they would need in terms of their larder and things. So I don't know. Like, this person is a knapsack. I love that. Also, like, I pulled this again, this another like book bag looking thing. Very much, to me, backpacks, especially that would have been in the Middle Ages, make me think of traveling, make me think of traveling monks, traveling for goods, like merchants. You would have to go to the next town over. Maybe this, kind of speaks to me of the dangers of traveling back in those times, and the distances in which you would have had to, and the arduousness of traveling mostly by foot. So I just love the look of these book bags here, the knapsacks. And see, this is an actual book. I love this image. Just love it. Love that they're reading while they're walking. It's just beautiful. A lot of emphasis on like veil like covering, face coverings and things. And I'm trying to work my way through that. Now here's another example to me of the everyday life, right? Like, this person has made the soup and has eaten the soup, or is eating the soup and has become the soup. Like, it's just all of that rolled into one. I think that's highly fascinating. Again, with the everyday, this looks to me like they're driving something. So to me, this is almost like seasickness, right? Like, this would have been a fisherman, or possibly someone like a merchant on a ship that the ship is trading. They're trading in wine. I'm not really sure that would have been a thing back in this time. But then the two keys here make me think that, again, clergy. And maybe this is the drunkenness of the monks in this particular city that the illustrator's from. I don't know. Here we see what looks to be a frog, but, well, it just automatically makes, like, these two together. Like, the faces here just make me think of frogs. But this, what they're wearing, looks to be a linden leaf, which is like the little helicopter things that fly off of certain trees. And that makes me think that this person is itty bitty. So that makes me think of the fairy folk and what would have been the belief structure around impish creatures, and demons, of course, were a thing. But like the visions people would have had that would have gone into the in-between, and what they would have thought fae folk would have looked like. Now this embodies what I like, the upside down world, like where this, frog looking figure, it's not really a frog, this frog looking figure is holding a staff here, or really like a pitchfork, a fork with a friar on it. So it's almost like the tables have turned, like the friar was making the soup, but we've kind of turned it around and the frog is making friar soup. So also, here's some with structures. I really like these because it pulls emphasis on protection. It pulls me to think of protection. It pulls me to think of rank and what the tricks, like this very much makes me think of like almost like a Seven of Swords vibe, where we're playing tricks to get to the truth and things. So, but then towers in general, castles in general, the structures of those, who was living in them. So I think that these are so interesting. What were these last three cards here? Now see this, look, this reminds me of like an incense, what would have been like a church incense holder, where the incense would have been puffing out. So it's almost like a satirical take on the clergy. And then this right here, like, because the wheel here is prominent and the belly is prominent here, it kind of makes me think this is, I don't know, poking fun at the obesity of what would have been the nobility back in those times, and how you can't even walk around, you have to wheel your gut everywhere. That's really hilarious. So I love the use of beads. Now, if I could take a liberty here, a lot of the cards in this deck wearing beads on their on their belts. Now, that could go, to me, that could go two ways in terms of the time period. Beads could have been very much like religious. They were religious in nature. They were just mnemonic devices, ways in which to count your hours, right? Your prayers. So they were very much prayer beads back in those days. It would have been made out of wood or resin, maybe even possibly amber, and they would have been part of the everyday outfit, okay? But also wearing on the belt here, medieval women back in those times that were like prostitutes or sex workers would have had to wear bells to warn people that they were coming down the street or whatever. In this, like, you know, in this, they are the lowest of the low type of a mentality that the medievalists would have had. But so I kind of go back and forth between whether the beads are meant to be prayer beads or calling cards. You know, I don't know. That's something I'm exploring. Here's two more that I really love because I wanted to share one with an instrument. I love the fact that they use instruments. For me, it kind of goes on the playful nature of the everyday person and the importance of music that has been important and is important in ritual and entertainment and thing. Anyway, so love that. Again, we see this crazed, what looks to be a crazed person. She appears to be eating a shoe. I love that. So, one thing that this deck also makes me think about is the roles of women. Back in those times, the roles of women, I guess let's do these three first. Because we don't really have much room here. But we see this kind of like, it kind of makes me think of what women roles were back in those times, but then also this kind of derogatory nature of the temperament of women, the lunacity that would have been women, the irrationality of women, and how that was very much a thing that those people back in these times would have said were the reasons women didn't hold much power. They couldn't hold land. They couldn't hold nobility ranks because of their irrationality and because of their emotionality and sensibility. And I just think that is, for me, something very, very important that I explore in my own research fascination and stuff. This here is this just sad, very sad looking figure that's she's feeding these baby birds here, but she seems to be in a sack, like here's a knot and here's a knot, like this is a sack of, and it's very much speaking to me of poverty, which is something else I explore, poverty, and what my views are on that, what my views are on altruism, and what my views are on the sense of community, right? I like this image because it makes me think of one of my all-time favorite paintings, because it was one of the first pieces of art that I saw that made me break down in tears. And so therefore it's just been one of those paintings that stayed with me forever. And it's a painting called The Lunatic. And I'm gonna leave a picture on the screen. But it's essentially about this woman who is assumed to be of poverty standing, or else she's gone that way since this tragedy. But essentially, she's holding a log wrapped in blankets, and it's literally called the lunatic. But there's no evidence to suggest whether or not she's lost a child and is trying to gain that nurturement back, whether she wants a child and can't conceive, whether she's of lowly birth, whether she's a sex worker. And that also, the fact that it's called the lunatic makes me think that maybe she's mental ill. If she has a like a mental disability, or like even neurodivergence, if she's neurodivergent, she could be pretending that the log is a baby doll. So I don't know. It reminds me, this card reminds me of her, and I wish that I had, I don't know. I often think about her and what I would say to her if I ever met her. So anyway, so this kind of makes me, this deck's making me explore, like, you know, the temperament, the lunacity of women, also to the bastardization, or the concept of bastardization, the concept of children getting born that had unmarked graves, that would have either died from stillbirths or died from, I guess, what we're calling now SIDS. These unbaptized children would have not had the opportunity to be buried in the churchyard, and that would have been another. That's something else I'm exploring, with the, especially like cards like this that have breastfeeding aspects and things like that. I don't know, maybe I'm going that route because I just had a baby. Here's a couple more like, this reminds me, like, if the Scarlet Woman had a like this cup of abomination she's holding this vessel of wine. She's not done drinking, but she's already drunk, and she's kind of giving it out to the masses, giving this the fruitfulness out to the masses in very much this, like, you know, Dionysus ritualized debauchery happening here. But it also does make me think of the temperament of women. And then this bell woman here that very much looks like a nun, or even possibly a Beguine, yelling. Maybe she's, you know, saying that it's dinner time. I don't know. This is what this makes me think of. This also makes me think of the concept of death beauty, and like ossuaries, like using, you know, bones and skulls to decorate, and the maybe even possibly the ridiculousness of the way in which people think of sin, the way in which people would have played sin up in big ways, and even possibly played eroticism up in big ways to insinuate how bad sin is, and how, I don't know, it's just something. I'm exploring the concept of sin with this. Okay, now some deck pairings. I've got my Bosch Tarot here. It's very, very beautiful. Like, I love that. Look at that. Wow. It's very good. I mean, that is so good. So good. Oh my God. I love this elephant here. It reminds me of one of the Goetic demons, one of the drawings of the Goetic demons, the elephant. I mean, how perfect is this? It's so good together, you guys. So good. I love the Bosch Tarot. I can't make this up. I can't make up how good this looks together. God. I'm not doing this, you guys, I swear. But I just find so many good similarities. So many good Bosch attributes to the dream world of Pantagruel. For real. Oh my God, the shroud nature of death in this habit here, or what I'm calling a habit. A woman headdress. This looks like a woman veil, like one of those linen head coverings, but how it's roped with death. Oh my God, that's so good. Definitely the best pairing right here. So anyway, that's the Bosch Tarot. And then another one is just get out a regular tarot deck. I happen to get out this one, which is the Jacques Veville, not the good one. Not the good one that has just come out, but this is like the older version that's still really messy. That looks like, someone's child colored it. But just, playing around with this and, just a normal tarot deck, or even maybe a Marseille if you wanted to go keep with the same kind of a, time period. Oh, here's the Fool and the Magician together. I like that. Anyway. Are these all upside down? No. I just put reversals in this particular deck. Here's the High Priestess. Oh, I need to be doing this, don't I? Just, like, interplay with, There we go. Interplay with some tarot. I like using it with Marseille. I actually want to get my ancient Italian out and play around with it, even though they're of two different because this is more French. This is more French style to me, but still it would look good together, I guess is the point, right? And then I have my oracle, which is the luminescent right here. Again, not the same, even though I guess I would consider Joan of Arc this kind of time period, but some of these paintings aren't going to be, oh my gosh, look how good this is. Some of these paintings aren't going to be from the medieval times, but still. I love that. You see how this is coming out of his stomach, just like Jesus's wound here? Nightmare. Connection. These Marys here talking. Resilience. Still haven't made up my mind what I think this is. Is this like a cup? Like one of those metal cups? It's very good. It's very good too. I like the darkness that is this deck. Ooh, I like this. What is this figure seeing in this mirror? Oh, I love this so much. So that's another deck that I've been using. And then finally the last deck, because this particular deck is the Dreams of Pantagruel. I've been using my dream deck, the deck that I use primarily for dreaming, and that is my soul cards. I'll have to move my prayer beads out of the way and get this deck up here. And because I'm not going to show you it, just so the light's better, I'll do that. Very, very, very ethereal. It puts an ethereal nature to these, tangible beings. I love that. Like, she's getting a kiss on the cheek here, or, you know, they're getting a kiss on the cheek here, but then this person has these, like, they have, like, these things coming off the nose, like the nose has got the kiss. I don't know. Vessel. Love the concept of vessels, too, because I believe vessels to be a symbol of what God would have been like. Now, see, look, okay, this makes me think of, like, this figure here is in this. That's in this, you know, tureen here. Soup tureen almost, or even a pot. Like, this person's inside this pot. You see, and I can use this when I'm interpreting my dreams or dream initiation. Like, I'll pull some cards and then see if my dreams match up to what I've pulled, right? So, just very intuitive, very fluid, you know? I love that aspect to both of these together. Very nice. Okay. Well, I am so happy to have this deck in my possession. I want to thank Sorsha for her hard work in making this and putting this out, and we can all have fun with this big chunky Dreams of Pentacle Oracle and get to know some of these fabulous people and creatures, and maybe even possibly go down historical rabbit holes in terms of learn from the past, not romanticize the past, and move forward and have fun in the process. So I will leave Sorsha's links below to go and check it out. Check this out. Check Sorsha out. If you don't know Sorsha, go and check out her channel. I will leave some links below for you. And I'll be back to share some findings with you guys. So I hope to see everyone again soon on the channel. Much love.